And S3 is basically a synergy between certain patterns, and what I mean by patterns is either like guidelines for behavior, or patterns of behavior we can see people follow, or particular processes, or simply definitions for communicating and understanding in terms of different elements of collaboration. So from one perspective you could say it's a collection of observable patterns you can see people using to navigate the various issues they face in organizations, including in the complex domain. And the basic idea is that people can pull from that menu on an as-needed basis in response to the organizational needs they face. Well, one thing about Holacracy is it's a whole system approach. So as far as I understand, if you don't pull in all of Holacracy, then you're doing something else and not Holacracy. So there's a belief in the interdependency of the different elements of Holacracy, and you should do them all.
So it's all
together.
in, right?
It's all in, yeah. So that's one big difference, because S3 says don't change anything unless it's broken and you would like to do something different. Yeah. So in that sense, you just pull in whatever it is that might be helpful. Holacracy, I think, tried to get around some of the ambiguities around how you distinguish what's a valid kind of argument or objection to something and what's more kind of personal preference by putting together a kind of a tick box list of criteria for when somebody can stand in the way of somebody else's proposal, an idea of how to respond to an organizational need. Another thing I think is that there's no patterns for co-creation in Holacracy. So it very much emphasizes the individual and gives agency to the individual. Whereas in S3 there are also patterns that are based on the premise that sometimes tapping the diverse perspectives of various stakeholders and synergizing that can lead to a whole that's greater than the sum of its parts. So it quite explicitly would advocate for some kind of collaborative process of proposal forming and decision making were that the case. In order for organizations to grow in as complex adaptive systems to navigate complexity in the world, then they need to be able to respond rapidly to changing contexts. And you can't do that from a centralized point at scale.
You have to escalate up to make a decision.
And you can see it even in a typical like top-down organizational hierarchy, with like a management hierarchy. There's still agency of individuals to a degree, but the question is to what degree, you know, and at what point can somebody override somebody else? And what we're aiming for in a decentralized system is to enable agency and autonomy as much as possible within clearly defined constraints that enable people both to respond for themselves and be resourced to do so, but also know where the line is when it's necessary or valuable to back up and talk to other stakeholders who might be impacted or have a valuable contribution to make. Yeah.